Today we're going to make salmon croquettes with grits, a breakfast staple in the South. So join me. Today we're going to start with our salmon. You can get salmon out of can. I know you can make it with fresh salmon as well, but we're going old school, what I grew up with my big ma and my Maria making. We're making pink salmon out of the can. You can get whatever brand you prefer. We have some garlic powder. We have some sweet paprika. We have some onion powder. We have some tagine today. Some flour, a little cornmeal, a little panko, salt and pepper to taste. Now, to that salmon croquette, we're also going to add some tuna. I use the tuna in the pack, but you can use the tuna in a can. And I grew up with them using this as a stretcher for the salmon, so you don't have to use as much salmon, and it doesn't alter the taste at all. So you can use a pack of this as well, or a can of tuna. Okay, as the salmon has drained in the colander, what you do is take the salmon, remove the skin. That's what you don't want in your product. So you remove the skin. The little pin, the little bones that's in here, that's okay because that's protein. It's gonna crush up, so it's not gonna matter. That's just texture. So you're gonna take the salmon, take as much of that skin as you possibly can off of there. Leave everything else remaining. So this is pretty simple. Take it, leave it. I'm gonna clean the fat. I forgot that part. Clean the little loose fat in the skin. And you split it open as well. So you leave the bones, you make sure you're splitting to get as much of that fat and skin off. It only takes a second to do. So you're gonna take that off. Again, not worry about the bones. Remove that. Okay, so all that's gonna be your waste. Now, to this, let me wash my hands real quick. Okay, so once the salmon has been all remove the skins, or as much as the skin, you then take your fingers. This is the best way. This is the way my grandmothers grew up watching them do it. You just take it and you crush it with your fingers. Just run your fingers through there. Say, with your freshly cleaned hands, you just take it and crush your fingers, crush the bones. You feel the bones, but you feel that you're crushing them as well. They're just texture, remember that. You're not gonna taste the bones. They're not gonna get caught in your throat. It's okay. So see, you take that, you remove anything or an object, any more extra skin, have that all crushed in there. So see, gives you salmon all crushed up. Don't put this in a food processor. Just do it with your fingers. You can feel. So there you go. All your salmon is all crushed up. Now you're gonna go ahead and add your other ingredients. Just a moment. Now to our salmon, we're gonna add that pouch of tuna I told you about. You just add that. If it's a can of tuna, drain it and then add it. We're gonna add an egg. One egg. Actually, we're gonna go ahead and add 2 eggs to this. The remainder of the eggs, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove the remainder of the eggs. We're going to beat the egg a little, just lightly. Pour it over the salmon. What we're going to do is heat our cast iron pan or any skillet that you have. You're going to heat the pan, add a touch of butter. I forgot to tell you that, but we always go cook with butter. So we have a touch of butter we're going to add to the pan, and what we're doing is we're going to slightly cook our veggies to go in our salmon. Now, some people put them all in raw. I like the difference of the texture, so we're going to cook a little, leave a little raw. It'll still cook when you form your patties. You just won't have that raw veggie in the center. So what we're gonna do is once that gets hot, go ahead and add a little onion. If you don't eat onion, leave it out. It's my food, so I eat onion. So we put onions in here. We're gonna go ahead and add a little red peppers in there. Add our celery. I also cut the tops of the celery. And here's something you may not know. You should clean the celery prior to using it. Take it, snap it off, clean it. Clean it, because celery is extremely dirty. So we want to clean the celery so we don't get grit. If you get grit in your food, it's probably because you didn't clean your celery. We also clean all your vegetables though. We also have a little yellow peppers because I like the colors. Eat with your eyes first. So therefore I like the color. We put a little yellow pepper in there as well. So these are our veggies. Put as much as you like in yours. Now also I'm going to put a little fresh garlic in there. And that includes all our veggies. And as I say, you're just going to cook it a little bit. A little while. So if I had to say, I'd say about 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes you're going to cook this. If you're a person who doesn't want to crunch, then continue cooking. So you would cook about 10 minutes. I'm saying about 3 to 5 minutes tops. What you do with that is turn off your burner, let that sit, and cold. So let's go back to our salmon now. But before we go back to our salmon, the water that we have boiling for our grits, we want to go ahead and salt that. So salt the water. I'm using kosher salt. Every time I cook, I use kosher salt. So if you're using any other salt, you may wish to add more. But I like kosher salt. So we're using kosher salt and we just let that boil. Just let the water simmer. There's no rush. You let that cook. Just salt and water. That's simple. Okay, an additional item that we're going to add to this breakfast is gravy. Now, what we're going to do is heat up a cast iron pan or any skillet of your choice. I just like cast iron. So, we have the pan heating. I'm going to add a little oil, just a touch of oil, just to coat the bottom of the pan, not even completely the bottom. See? You can add the olive oil to that as well if you like. What I'm going to do is go ahead and add some onions to this. Now you hear the onion sizzle? The onion is sizzling. I'm also going to add a touch of butter because again, I like the flavor of butter. We'll add the onion, and what we're going to do once we add the onion is just let it sit. Best thing to do is let it sit and let it cook. And while that is doing its thing, we're going to go back over to the grits. I'm using the Quaker old-fashioned grits. I had to look to see what I was using.
Here you go.
Okay, so while we're preparing our gravy, our onions are over here just doing their thing. We're going to go back over to our grits. Our water is boiling for our grits. Just read the back of your container for old-fashioned grits. It should tell you how. The only difference is in the South, we add a little heavy cream or milk to the grits. That makes it nice and creamy. Somebody out there didn't know that secret. And you go ahead and you add your grits. Now, I'm winging it. I want you to measure though. So you add your grits, and the key here is the whisk while you're adding it. You get a feel for it to know how much. I'm making a pot of grits here, enough for about 7. What I'm going to do as well with the grits is add me a little pepper. Now you might want to add white pepper because you don't like the little specks of black pepper, but it doesn't bother us. So we're going to let that cook. What I'm going to do is go ahead and get a top for that. I'll be right back. Okay, as you can see, our onions have been caramelizing. They're turning that nice, beautiful brown color. Now, I know most of you don't make gravy like this, but again, we're going old school. This is the way my elders taught us how to make gravy. So to this, we're going to add a little flour. So you're basically making the roux with the onions in the pan as you're making the roux. So you're using this. Onions, we're going to stir that in there and continue to cook. And they're continuing to brown, and what we're doing is cooking that flour flavor out of it. You don't have to add a truckload of flour, a couple of tablespoons depending on how much gravy you're intending to make. And you see how it's drying up in your pan? That's what you want. You continue to stir that around in the pan. That nice and brown, and you got the roux in the bottom cooking. Now, when you've used up all your oil in your pan, it's gone. You can also do this by taking the onions out, making a roux with a fat and flour, which could be butter and flour or oil and flour, and continue to stir. And basically what the roux is doing is you're cooking off the flour flavor, but you're thickening it up as well, and you're getting that brown color. So you continue to cook it. The more you cook it, the deeper the color. So had I cooked those onions till they were a lot browner, and had I not used these Vidalia sweet onions, but used the regular onions, which is the Spanish onions, it would have browned real nicely. But I like the sweet onions. Again, this is my food. So we cook that, let it continue to turn brown. Now you could stop and let it cook itself. The reason you move it around the pan so much is so it doesn't burn. Because you don't want roux that's got little black dots in it that's burned. Therefore you're stirring, mixing, giving it time to brown. Your heat is there, everything is right, because I want a medium colored gravy here, not a really dark gravy. So we're at that medium color. What you do, you hear all the sizzle in there still? And simple trick is, all we're going to do to this pan, add some water. Now it looks like a hot mess right now, but it's gonna come too. So you see the thickness is very thick. And normally you'd add chicken stock to this, or beef stock, and right here I have some better than bouillon. So we just gonna add a little of that to it. That's gonna give it flavor. That'd be better if you had some meat today that you could incorporate in this, such as if you had chicken, live-in onions, or something like that. But since you don't, we gonna make basic gravy. So we just want a slight brown gravy. As long as it tastes good with the grits, we good. Stir that and see how that's still terribly thick. It's okay. Because after you add the bouillon, well, you're better than the whatever stock or chicken stock or whatever you add, bone stock, you can go ahead and add some more water. So had you not used this and you used the stock instead, you just pour it in and that would be it. It would thicken up. But this has a lot of salt in it as already. So see, it's thickening up, very thick. And that's what you want, because all you're gonna do is continue to add liquid till you get it to the consistency that you want. That's all. So see, and if you use the proper utensil, you wouldn't have a mess here. See, and it just let it sit and simmer, and it's going to cook. Now, to this while it's cooking, I add an additional little pinch of garlic powder, add a little onion powder, add a little, if you want, you can add you some celery seeds, a lot of black pepper. I like black pepper. So we add a lot of black pepper, and we just let that cook. I went ahead and added a little oil. Just a smidget to the bottom of the pan. You don't want to drown your salmon patties in the oil. You just want a little bit at the bottom of the pan, and this is actually a good non-stick. But any heavy skillet of your choice I would use. Now to our gravy that we've already made, I went ahead and added a smidge of paprika to that. Just a pinch of paprika for the color, and I added a little fresh garlic to that as well. And again, see how it's coming together? Now, what you can also do for this, all of you that don't want to taste the onion or don't like textures, is you can put this in your magic bullet or any blender of your choice and just blend it all out till it's nice and smooth. So you'll have the flavor without the texture. Okay, back to our salmon. We have the eggs in the bowl, the 2 eggs that we put in here. We have the pack of tuna, and we have the salmon, the 3 cans of salmon. Again, I'm making quite a bit. So to that, we have our veggies that we sauteed earlier. We have waited till they've chilled. You want to cheat, pop them in the freezer for a minute. And we're going to go ahead and add. Now, I like a lot of veggies. If you don't like this many veggies, don't put them in your salmon. This is my food. So we add that to it. Going to go ahead and put that. So we have our veggies in here, all incorporated in. We're going to go ahead and start adding some more spices. So we got that tagine. We're going to add a little of that to it. This stuff is always so clumpy, so let's. Again, this is your taste. I don't like over-salted food, so it depends on what you like. This is some paprika, some sweet paprika. We put a little of that in there. Now, I know a lot of people like over-salted food. I don't. We're going to add a little cornmeal. I know, you just add a little cornmeal to it. This is the way my granny's made it. This is a little panko. Add a little panko. Now, I'm not a fan of flour, so I'll add a tablespoon or so. I don't like that gummy texture. So, try to do this. Whip it in, see when you see where it's gonna stick together to form like a ball. Okay, we need a little more in there. So we're gonna add a little more panko. I think this container was like 3 tablespoons, so we're good. That's 3 cans. And a little more cornmeal. And again, we're gonna do our salt and pepper to taste. And you can make one of these, taste it, see if it has enough salt. Garlic powder in here. And again, a little onion powder. Just basic. You want to master your food where you can't taste the actual salmon. So you want to be able to taste that. You want to be able to taste the veggies. If you put seasoned salt in it, you might ruin it because you can't taste the salmon. So again, we have our oil heating. We have this, and this is getting to that sticky texture now. So let's go ahead and form some balls and see how that works. Okay, so now we've mixed that up. What we're gonna do is form a ball. You simply grab a handful of the mixture that you have. Don't be scared. If it seems what you're doing is clumping it together in a ball to see if it stays in its true form, don't worry. If it falls apart, they'll still eat it. But all you have to do is if you see that it's falling apart too much, just add a little more cornstarch or flour or panko, whatever you choose to put in there. You can put in there. Grandmothers used to crumble up the old bread and put in there. So therefore, you have a little patty. You can make them as large as you like, but this way you can control it a little better. You take it and you add it to the oil. Simply take the patty, gently add it to the oil. If this is not your thing, I want you to get a spatula to assist you in adding that. See how that one fell apart? Adding it to the oil. I don't want you to burn your little precious fingers. We go back to our gravy. You see we're getting that nice walnut, a little darker than walnut, we'll say pecan shade to our gravy. What you want, since we don't have an actual meat other than the salmon, I want my gravy to match whatever's on my plate. You eat with your eyes first, see? So therefore, that gravy is complete. We just let that sit and simmer again. What to do is flip it. Make sure it's dark. We can let that get a little darker on the bottom before we flip it. The less oil, the easier it is. But you see how mine are too fat because they're falling apart. that's okay, because we don't eat them at my house. And again, it's not perfect, but it's going to be delicious. So see, let those cook. While those are cooking, let's go get a rack for them. Okay, once they're brown, you go ahead and remove them. See, they're nice and brown on the outside. And you let them cook nicely, not too high, so that you get all the ingredients on the inside cooked as well. Now, you can take these and hold them in the oven. The reason I place them on the rack with foil around them is because then you can sit them on a sheet pan and put them in your oven to hold them. It's also easy cleanup. You don't have to worry about 10,000 paper towels. Okay, so we're completing our grits. We went ahead and added the cheese inside the grits. Just add a few slices. I actually like smoked Gouda, but today we're going to use the cheddar. So we have the cheddar. You just throw it in the top of the grits. It's not that complicated. And see how nice and creamy? That's what your grits are supposed to be like. You don't have to cook grits 5 hours. Follow the directions. After 20-30 minutes, they should be fine. So our gravy is complete and thick and rich. We have that. Then we have our salmon patties. Some of them are darker than others. But see, and this batter with the 3 cans makes, I think we came to about 16 of the smaller patties. So now you know what it makes. Those are a little too done for me. But we have about 16 of the smaller salmon patties. Don't overcrowd your pan like I did. There you go. Okay, so let's go ahead and plate this up. And there you have it. Your salmon croquettes with your grits, your scrambled eggs, and your rich country gravy. That's breakfast.